Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Lunch Hour Sports Podcast. Here with your hosts, Jacob Smedley,
Sam Betts.
Justin Reedhammer.
Peter Amarante.
And Nathan Romanov.
Our topics today include a special segment from our very own Sam Betts for a very important topic across the country that you need to be aware of, and some NFL news. There is a new champion in town, but there are some players on the move already. We will have some updates in the NFL later on in the show. But first, Sam, you got a very special segment for us today. This month is National Athletic Training Month, and we have our very own athletic trainer right now working at Clemson University, working with track and field, softball as well. He's doing it all. Sam, you've got a special report for us. Take the floor.
Thanks, Jake. And hopefully I become a certified athletic trainer too after I take my BOC. But more on that hopefully later down the road. But yes, this month is National Athletic Training Month. It's something very important to me. It's something very important. It should be very important to the sports world or just kind of in healthcare in general. I wanted to take some time to talk about athletic trainers, kind of their importance. What is an athletic trainer and what is National Athletic Training Month? So, first off, what is an athletic trainer? Well, an athletic trainer is a healthcare provider, simply put, and they're very skilled in a couple different things. They're skilled in injury prevention, so helping kind of players or athletes, really anyone, just preventing injuries in general, making sure that injuries don't happen and taking the steps to do so. They're very skilled in evaluation and diagnosis, so evaluating injuries, diagnosing them, working with physicians or other healthcare providers to kind of come to a diagnosis. They're very good at emergency medicine, and we'll kind of talk about some an emergency medicine part that happened in sports, but anything with, let's say, like a neck injury, let's say an ACL injury, kind of getting on the field, assessing that, and taking the correct steps to do so. We also have therapeutic rehab and intervention. So if someone does get injured, taking them through the process of rehabbing that injury, going through range of motion, strengthening that part of the body, and making sure that that person is ready to go back. And when they are, making sure that they're ready to go back on the field when appropriate, and also organization and administrative duties. So making sure that medical documentation is up to date, maybe even working with insurance at some point, making sure that that person has the right insurance, making sure that they're just all that stuff's ready to go. So that's pretty much athletic training. Those are the kind of the fine domains of athletic training. Athletic trainers work with physicians, like I said before. They work with a bunch of other providers to help an athlete, help a patient stay healthy. Athletic trainers work in a lot of different settings too. They can work in the traditional setting, it's called, and that's a lot of our sports. So in the high schools, in college, in professional sports as well. And they work with a wide range of sports. Jake said that I'm working with track and field right now, but they work with all sports: baseball, basketball, lacrosse, field hockey, so many other sports that we've seen an athletic trainer for. Actually, at Clemson, they also have an athletic trainer for their cheerleading squad. So any sport can have an athletic trainer. There are also some places that athletic trainers are employed that don't really necessarily involve sports, but they work with an active population of people, so the military, performing arts such as like Cirque du Soleil or in the theater, fire and rescue, police officers, and they also work in physician offices too. So there's a whole wide range of settings where athletic trainers work in, and it's very exciting to see just kind of the different possibilities. I don't know if I would necessarily be inclined to work in one of those other settings, but maybe some point in the future, who knows? But right now, I'm really liking the traditional setting so far with sports.
Now, Sam, I gonna cut you off there with a quick question because I know you mentioned all of these different, avenues for athletic training, and I know for us, specifically for sports, I know you've done a handful of different sports for different universities as an athletic trainer. Is there like certain sports that might have an additional athletic trainer, or there's usually kind of one per sport? How does that work? Is it just depending on how many the university has or university or team has?
Yeah, so it really just kind of depends on the school you work at. A lot of the high schools usually have at least one athletic trainer, but there are many high schools that may only have someone who's part-time or don't have an athletic trainer. And that's kind of something that's been an increasing issue. But with the amount of advocacy that's been going on for the athletic training profession, that number is of schools that don't have an athletic trainer is slowly dwindling, and that's really good to see. But you can see for professional teams, I'll bring up baseball for example, because baseball is my favorite sport. A lot of minor league teams are starting to have at least one athletic trainer or starting to have two athletic trainers. And MLB staff you could see may have anywhere from three to four athletic trainers. At Clemson, there's at least one athletic trainer for each sport, or they might cover two sports. It kind of just depends. But I know at Lock Haven University, where I go to school, there are currently three athletic trainers. They're hiring a fourth right now, and they might work with all the sports. They might work with different sports. It kind of just depends. They usually decide that at the beginning of the year. So it kind of just depends on the school. I'd like to see at least every team, every sport, every school have at least one athletic trainer, at least have someone who can be a healthcare provider. But hopefully that number kind of starts to improve as well as time goes on. So the National Athletic Training Month, it's every March, so it's happening currently this month, and it's recognizing the athletic training profession and the role that it plays in patient and also healthcare as well. So it's always just such a great time to be an athletic trainer, just to keep promoting the profession. And the NATA, the National Athletic Trainers Association, really does a great job of promoting it. They always create a theme each year. So this year's theme is Champions in Healthcare. And it's just kind of showing that athletic trainers, while they're not always in the limelight, they're not always front and center stage. In fact, a lot of athletic trainers kind of tend to do stuff behind the scenes or kind of just stay out of the light, but that they put the team on their back essentially. And they work with athletes every day. They always make sure that they're ready to go. And when a team, and hopefully any sort of team, wins a championship, that the athletic trainer is a champion at that point, and not only just in physical sense, but also just kind of in the whole aspect of the team.
Yeah, that's great, Sam. I mean, I think it's very important not only with athletic trainers, but the rest of the support staff giving light to all of the people that give hours and hours, not only with athletic training with all of these athletes to make sure that they are in peak physical condition. We want to see all of these athletes at their best, and athletic trainers, like you said, are at the front lines with helping all of them. So a huge respect to you, Sam, and all of them out there that continue to work with our favorite athletes, everyone's favorite athletes across the country, and helping them not only right there in the locker room after games, during games, but also on off days and also on practice days. It's incredible.
Yeah, Jake, and there's a bunch of different ways to kind of help support athletic trainers, especially this month, and just keep promoting the profession. So, like I said before, the NATA always comes up with a theme. They always come up with posters. They also have different coloring sheets too. I know at some of the schools for Athletic Training Month, whenever some of the athletes come in, they would give them a coloring sheet and say, "Hey, do you want to support National Athletic Training Month?" So that's always fun and a very easy way just to kind of put something in your athletic training room or in your locker room or in your athletic facility. Another way is to post on social media. So this could just be as easy as posting posting a thank you to an athletic trainer, maybe even recording a video of yourself thanking an athletic trainer. That's a very nice simple way to do that too. So those are just kind of a couple ways. And I kind of want to just go, since this is a sports podcast and we all love sports very dearly, I kind of wanted to go through just a couple different moments in history. of athletic training. Nothing too grand, but just a couple points that I thought were interesting myself. So I kind of got this from the Pennsylvania Athletic Trainer Society Instagram, and they were kind of talking about how athletic training kind of got its start in ancient Greece. So there were a lot of gladiators, and athletic trainers would be there to help create exercise programs for them, kind of help with some nutrition aspects, help with some recovery aspects, but also just kind of be mentors to the athletes. And I feel like that really kind of pertains today as well. So I feel that from those humble beginnings, the profession has definitely evolved from that, but kind of goes back to those core moments from ancient Greece. The first athletic trainer who was employed in the United States, his name was James Jim Robinson. He's from England, but and he actually trained as a veterinary assistant. But he immigrated to the United States to train horses, but eventually ended up at Harvard and helped train the track and field team. It wasn't in the sense as being necessarily a healthcare provider, but more of a coach. But he is credited as being the first employed athletic trainer in the United States. So, again, more humble beginnings for our profession. I want to talk about PBATs because, again, love baseball, but they're an educational organization. They're the Professional Baseball Athletic Trainer Society, and they got their start in the 50s and 60s because a lot of the athletic trainers for those teams wanted to create kind of an educational club, essentially, place where all the athletic trainers from all the MLB teams could come together, share ideas, kind of learn from each other, and also just kind of gain some new aspects on healthcare and the healthcare that they're providing for their athletes. A lot of MLB teams were opposed to this because they thought, oh, well, you're going to share secrets with all these other teams. So they were very against it for the first couple of years, but eventually they allowed these athletic trainers to come together and really just kind of create a brotherhood, essentially, or a sisterhood now, now that a lot of females are kind of being involved in athletic training in the MLB and all professional sports, essentially. So it's nice to kind of have that camaraderie between all those people and allow them to kind of learn from each other. Another thing I want to talk about is Damar Hamlin on January 2nd of 2023. He collapsed due to commotio cordis, which is to kind of put it in a basic sense when your heart kind of gets hit during its contraction cycle, and it kind of causes the heart to kind of go kind of into a fibrillation, I want to say. Like it doesn't beat right. And he unfortunately collapsed, but Denny Kellington, the Bills' assistant athletic trainer, was one of the first people out on the field, was able to start CPR, and then along with the other athletic trainers from the Bills and medical staff there, they were able to get Damar Hamlin on an ambulance and get him to the hospital. So that's just kind of one of those things that kind of put athletic training right in the spotlight, for better or for worse. But it was a very unfortunate incident, but Kellington and the Bills' athletic training staff were recognized for their work, and I just felt like that was a very big thing for the profession, and it was a very good outcome for Damar Hamlin, and he's been able to speak about athletic training in that aspect as well. P, I see you have a question.
I do. Speaking of Damar Hamlin's story, what have you encountered as an athletic trainer? What would you say is your most impactful moment? What would you say has impacted you in your career the most?
I think it's just being with my patients or at my athletes, just being with my patients. It's definitely the people and just a lot of special moments. You get to meet a lot of different people, get to make some really big connections. And I think that's just one of the reasons why I love this profession is just the people that are involved in it. And being coming to South Carolina and also being a part of a bunch of other schools in Pennsylvania, it's just been a great experience overall. And I don't think I would change anything about it. So, but yes, definitely the people are the biggest thing for me.
And also, I just like another question on that whole situation. With all of the publicity that you mentioned and the different, um, stuff. I guess, what did you see anything kind of happen in athletic training in the months, after DeMar Hamlin and that reaction from the athletic training community? Was there any kind of new, I don't want to say protocol necessarily, but kind of what was the aftermath of that kind of global sports, event for athletic training?
Like I said before, athletic trainers tend to kind of stay out of the light and stuff like that, but it really brought the profession forward, and it just gave an opportunity to for athletic trainers to say, "Hey, this isn't just a one-time occurrence. Like athletic trainers are out in the field doing this job." And I feel like it really just propelled it into the spotlight where it's not usually done, but I felt like it was a very positive push for the profession, and it allowed people to educate on what an athletic trainer is, which is what I'm trying to do right now. And it also just kind of gave some recognition to not only the Bills athletic trainers, but just athletic trainers across the country. So I felt like it just kind of really propelled that profession into the spotlight and gave people a chance to just kind of advocate for the profession even more.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Sam, for the detailed awareness. And again, feel free thank an athletic trainer that you know. We thank Sam for his wonderful contributions to, as he mentioned, to Clemson, to Lock Haven, to the schools and teams that he's been a part of already in his young journey. We know he's going to be great. We know he's going to get to the top. But thank an athletic trainer that you know. And yeah, as Sam mentioned, do those other things. If you know one, take a picture, share their story, and they do so much great things. As Sam mentioned, as we all mentioned, we're all sharing that. Great work, Sam. Great segment, and yeah, great job, Sam. But shifting gears, going from athletic training to some trading and free agents on the move in the NFL. However, guys, there is a new champion in town in the NFL. Okay, I won't go on two more as Peter is representing there with the shirt. Philadelphia Eagles are the recent Super Bowl champions. Justin's in pain. He's going to have to suffer for a little bit longer. But it's the off season. Trades, free agents are happening. Justin, what's happening?
Well, it's one of the best times of the year because once again, we all have a chance to win the Super Bowl, so that's great. So some teams are going to make some moves and some guys are going to be moved around. We're not yet there at free agency, and we're not even at the point yet where teams are really talking to free agents. But we are still starting to see a couple of re-signings, a couple of trades going around. So let's just get to some of these bigger moves, and then we can talk about any niches that you guys want to mention here and there. But I just went straight from a website straight down to the ones that I thought were interesting. So if you're worried about any particular order, there isn't any. I'm just going to go from the top, and we'll start with the fact that T. Higgins was franchise tagged. Again, second time that they've had to use the franchise tag on him. So he'll be sticking around one more season, at least for them. But I don't know. The way it looks, doesn't seem like they're going to be able to iron out a long-term contract extension there.
Yeah, it was interesting to see the Cincinnati Bengals decide to use their franchise tag on T. I was hearing mumbles and mutters of them trying to work with T. Higgins on a contract extension at the end of last season. I heard that he said that he wanted to work with the team in order to make things happen. However, when it comes to the Cincinnati Bengals, all of us sitting around this podcast know that the Bengals need so much more help other than a wide receiver. When it comes to that offense, I think that T. Higgins is a great wide receiver to have to complement Jamar Chase. However, you gotta the NFL is just as much a business as it is a sport as it is a team game. And when it gets down to the wire, you need to be able to say take the hit, or you make sacrifices elsewhere, and I think T. Higgins sticking around for another year will be good. I think that the Bengals now that they have that security, having that wide receiver too, and you just lost two defensive. Well, you lost a defensive player to retirement. You have another defensive player seeking out trades. You got to iron out that defense. You got to iron out that shamble of an O line, and you really got to make some adjustments on that team now that you have that wide receiver two locked in.
Yeah, I think I agree. With Peter, I think there's some other pressing issues with the team, and also kind of looking at it from a personal standpoint, disappointing for T. Higgins, a player that I think you could make the argument. He's one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver twos in the game. I think you can really make that argument there, and could be a number one on a lot of NFL teams as well. So, I mean, he wants to get paid. He wants that extension, that long-term security, for himself. So, I think that it's disappointing for him. For the Bengals, they need more, and it's just kicking the rock down the street is how I view it. There's going to be another decision with him. There's going to be other guys that need to get paid as well. So you're just pushing it down the line, seeing if you can get a cheaper offer later. It's business is what it is.
Yeah, I echo that sentiment, Jake. It's business. I'm sure it's not what T would have wanted, but, that's the position that he's put in. And like you said, the team has a lot of other areas they need to improve on this offseason if they want to compete in their own division and, compete for the AFC next season.
Yeah, but I would say it's not as disappointing as this next one I'm going to mention here. Disappointing for really everybody involved. Myles Garrett agreed to a 4-year contract extension with $123 million guaranteed, $40 million a year, highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. Which, I mean, yeah, it's great for the money, but he had stated previously that he's not in it for the money anymore. He wants a ring, and the Browns kind of pigeonholed him into re-signing again because they just were not willing to trade him, and he didn't want to sit around for 2 years. So he was put in a bad spot, and I feel like it was bad for Garrett. It's bad for the rest of the NFL that wanted Garrett, and it's bad for the Browns because now they're paying all this money to Garrett, and they're not going to have any money to pour into the rest of their team.
I mean, this is a classic Browns thing to do, right? Kick the crap out of something and overpay and not give your future team a chance, right? Myles Garrett's got plenty left in the tank. I'm not saying he's going to retire at the end of this season. But when they paid Deshaun Watson that bucket load of money to be their QB1, this guy that was supposed to replace and be the new heart of this Browns team, he kicked the can. I mean, they basically took Baker Mayfield and treated him like crap, and then threw him away like he was a piece of trash. And now they're chokeholding Myles Garrett onto this team, and they're like, oh, this is all you are is a pile of money to us. So we're not gonna value you as a player. We're not gonna value you as a person. We're just gonna throw a bucket load of money at you and make you stay on this team where you have zero to no chance of succeeding in the postseason. You have zero to no chance of even seeing a championship game. And it's the most Brown things to do. I mean, I've seen the Browns do it with Baker. I've seen the Browns do it with Myles Garrett. They did it with Deshaun Watson. I mean, not that Deshaun Watson is going anywhere, but am I surprised? Not really. Do I feel bad for the teams and for Myles Garrett who were showing interest, who are going to vitalize his talent and use him as a key player? Absolutely, I do.
Yeah, Peter, I think you bring, an interesting point. The Browns, the organization, we are clown for their over really past 25 years and even further their decisions. I'm going to look at it again from Myles Garrett because you brought up, his point of view. The trucks of money are getting backed up to his house in the cartoon fashion. All of the money's getting just backed up, dumped into his. But I feel like we should point out, he is worth, a lot of money. He probably, you could make the argument, one of the best defensive players. Definitely, I think you can make the case the best defensive end in football, one of them at least. So, I feel like he is worth a lot of money. The most by a non-quarterback, though, that's, when you get into a whole different situation. But, happy for him, happy for his family, to get this, money, life-changing money for him and his family, at what cost, again, like you said, Justin, and Peter as well, the two different, sides with winning, with the money, with the Browns, the whole situation. So, wait and see if, maybe down the line in this contract they'll put together, another competitive team that they had a few years ago that made it to the wild card round. But, he had that chance. He could have really requested out and put pressure on him, but decided to back off of it, took the money offer instead.
Which is why I really don't feel too bad for him. I mean, he's getting paid all that money, and in the end, he's the one who agreed to stay in Cleveland. So, I guess winning wasn't that important to him. But he's worth the money, like Jake said, probably the best defensive end in football. So if you're not going to go compete for a championship, at least, earn what you're worth. And that's
why not
doing.
make the buckets load of money?
Yeah,
they just
exactly. So earn what you're worth, take the deal. From the Browns' perspective, though, it's the Browns, as we all know, like as you said, we clown on them because they are probably the worst organization in the NFL, or one of the worst organizations in the NFL. It doesn't make a lot of sense. He's been their guy. He's been there since he was drafted, and he had the chance. He took them they went to the playoffs. It was a good run. They had the chance to, respect his wishes, try and find a deal for him. Like you said, Justin, that would have helped the team, enter a rebuilding phase. I mean, look at where they're picking in the draft. They're number 2. They have the number 2 overall pick. So it's just a missed opportunity from an organizational standpoint to, say, hey, thank you, Miles. We'll respect your trade request. We'll find you a good deal that lands you on a team that can compete and gives us assets in return that we can use to revitalize our own organization, because we all know that's what Cleveland needs to do. And they didn't want to do it. Oh, well. Now, like you said, Peter, they're going to dish out all this money to Myles Garrett, which, hey, he deserves it. He's earned it. But in the end, it's kind of a shame.
Well, and it's not even just that. It's just the fact that, they dish out all this money. You're not leaving any room for your team in the future. You're not leaving any room for these young guys. And you're setting yourself so far back.
The best organizations understand that you need to lose sometimes in order to win. And those organizations are sitting at the top right now, and the organizations like the Browns that hold on to their key pieces for far too long and pay them too much money, they're at the bottom. Yes, but let's get away from the bad organizations, guys. Let me get through some quick hits here. Let's talk about Houston Texans acquiring Christian Kirk from the Jacksonville Jaguars, division rivalry there, for a 2026 7th rounder, pretty much nothing basically. And the Raiders getting Geno Smith from the Seahawks for a 2025 3rd rounder. Then Max Crosby getting his extension, $106,091,500 guaranteed there.
Talk about the Texans really quick. I think Christian Kirk's a good ad. The Texans have been struggling the last 2 seasons, especially with their wide receivers getting hurt. Last season Stephon Diggs got hurt. Tank Dell completely obliterated his leg. And then Nico Collins had that concussion problem. Season before that, Tank Dell had another injury. Nico Collins had it. So I think that Christian Kirk is going to fit into that scheme pretty well. I don't know necessarily who he's going to take reps from right now, whether that be Stephon, Nico, or Tank. But I think that he's a good receiver too. I think Christian Kirk could use a change of scenery as a wide receiver. I feel like Jacksonville's scheme wasn't. He did well in Jacksonville, but I feel like they weren't able to fully get the full potential out of Christian Kirk there. But that might just be my opinion. As for the Raiders, Max Crosby being on that defense, he is the light of that defense. He is that spark that drives that defense. So I think that's great for their defense. And if they can get some young guys in there and he can be that veteran mentor for those guys, that's awesome for them. I know he was another big free agent that a lot of teams were looking at signing if they were able to. And then getting Geno Smith, I think, is great for that offense. I think that Geno Smith is a veteran mind. He has that no-quit kind of attitude. And unlike John Cena, he ain't gonna turn heel. So, he's got that no quit attitude, and I think that, with the ability to reunite with Pete Carroll being their head coach now, I think seeing some familiar faces will be good for that offense, especially with Geno Smith.
Yeah, I think you bring up, going back to Christian Kirk, another guy that has, struggled with his injuries last year as well with the Jaguars going there to the Texans. I'm going to use a phrase that, Sam might recognize with baseball. Sam repeated with baseball a little bit. You can't have too much pitching in baseball. Same, I think it goes with wide receivers and also offensive linemen in football. You can't have too much wide receivers or linemen there, especially with injuries that happen, the wear and tear on those positions throughout the year. So I think it's a great add for depth if everyone's healthy next year, that you can have Christian Kirk, a veteran, as that number 4 wide receiver, number 3, depending on, of course, the recovery time for Tank Dell with Stephon Diggs and such, and just another weapon for C.J. Stroud, for a team that, even the playoffs all said and done, still really challenge the Chiefs in the playoffs, and maybe a play or two away from changing that game. So adding some depth there, great move. And the Raiders, guys, I know we will get our predictions and such later on, months down the line, once we get close to the season, but I like it. I like Pete Carroll coming in, that mindset. Maybe it's Tom Brady. Maybe Tom Brady pushing all the buttons is getting them in the right direction as an organization. But I like Geno Smith, whether that is a kind of a stopgap to a younger quarterback that they get in the draft, a guy that can play a solid role now, and you can build that younger guy up, or different ways to go about it. But yeah, reuniting with Pete Carroll, as you mentioned, Peter, I like it with the Raiders. I like what they're doing. They lock up Max Crosby, going from one great D end to another, and not a team harmful deal, which is clowning the Browns here. That's what this episode has turned into. But yeah, great deal, great for Max Crosby, and the Raiders, look out, guys, not only in the draft, but some other free agent moves this team could keep adding.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that the Raiders have had the best offseason thus far of any team, really, in the NFL. I mean, hiring Pete Carroll, then, like you said, re-signing Max Crosby, and getting Geno. I think everything they've done has really, really been great in terms of what they're building. Pete Carroll said they're not going to be stagnant. This is not going to be a slow process. He wants to build a team that can compete. We know they have young pieces on the offense like Brock Bowers, and they have Jacoby Myers, both of whom are great weapons that will be able to benefit from having a better quarterback, a guy like Geno Smith, who I think really found his rhythm, revitalized his career in Seattle under Pete Carroll. So it's, I'd say it'd be an exciting time to be a Raiders fan, and they have a decent spot here in the draft. They could draft a player, or they could move that pick for other pieces too. So it's really looking up there in terms of that. Christian Kirk, good for him getting to the Texans. Didn't even know about it. It's kind of a nothing deal for me. So he can go join the wide receiver infirmary over in Houston. So
it's interesting, Nate, what you said about the draft pick with the Raiders. I just saw something on Instagram earlier today that we know how aggressive this Raiders organization is being this offseason. You said it yourself, one of the most go-get-it attitude off seasons right now. The Rams are interested in dropping their asking price for Cooper Kupp. Could you see the Raiders possibly trading a draft pick for Cooper Kupp and really locking in that wide receiver room for Geno Smith? I mean, if you think about it, Cooper Kupp, I think he's still got a couple years of really good football left in him, even though there has been apparent leg injuries with him. However, using Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, and Cooper Kupp with Geno Smith, I mean, I really think that if they can make that happen, that is something that they should shoot for with the Stars.
I don't know. I can't project it. I would, if I was the Raiders, I don't think Cooper Kupp at this point in his career would be worth a first-round pick, so I wouldn't expect them to move that pick.
What about a
Cooper
second
Kupp.
or third? Because they said they didn't even go as far as a fourth or fifth round pick.
Potentially, but like you said, Cooper Kupp's had injury issues recently, and he's not getting any younger. No disrespect to him. But if they can like you said, like they have been aggressive this offseason. They've
If they
made
don't want to be
some good
stagnant, go
moves.
for it.
So
Go straight in for the veterans,
yeah,
right?
I mean, hey,
You don't want to be
as
stagnant.
as a Broncos fan, I kind of hope they don't go for it. I think they've done enough, but kudos to them, like I said. And if they do something like that, Peter, I think that'd be a good move. I do.
Yeah, and Peter, I mean, if Cooper Cup doesn't have an agent, clearly you're ready to talk up the guy. So I mean, if he needs an agent, I would give him your phone number today. So I think a third round pick. I don't know if I'd go higher than that, but
Third round pick Cooper Cup. Talk about not being stagnant. Talk about signing a veteran wide receiver. So even if you do have those young wide receivers who can have a mentor on that field, I mean, you want to be aggressive in the offseason. Go get your key pieces. Don't rely on the chances of a draft.
Yeah, well, I'm going to regret talking about this team because I always do. So apologies to me 20 minutes from now. But Saquon Barkley signed a 2-year extension with the Eagles worth $41 million, 36 guaranteed with 15 more in incentives. And the Eagles also re-signed Zach Bond to a 3-year deal, $51 million, 34 guaranteed there. But in the same division, we can also talk about Washington acquiring Deebo Samuel for just a 5th-round pick in this year's draft.
You want to talk about trading somebody for a bag of rice. I mean, Washington literally got Deebo Samuel for a bag of rice. I mean, good Lord. San Francisco, you gotta at least fight. I mean, it's called negotiations for a reason, but that's all well and said in the past because he signed a contract. Saquon and re-signing with Philly, I think, is awesome to have that extension. I think that he sees his full potential in Philadelphia. I feel like he finally sees what that kind of running back he could be with an actual O line that supports him and a team and an offense and a coach that support him. Unlike the Giants who threw him out there like a rag doll, mistreated him to the fullest extent, pitiful New York Giants that they are. And then Zach Bond being that focal point of that linebacker room in the defensive side of the ball. I mean, a guy who came in from New Orleans who was pretty much not many people knew who he was, knew of him, knew his name even, and he came in there, made a name for himself. So as a guy who had a career altering season, I'm excited for him. I'm excited. I saw that the Eagles also were able to extend AJ Brown and all that stuff. I'm just excited to see what this Philly team does and these Eagles do. But Debo to the Commanders, I mean, I hope for the growing Commanders' sake, I hope it goes well. However, I do have concerns with Debo getting stagnant in his play. He has had injuries. He has tapered off here and there. He's getting a little older. I think Dan Quinn will use him well. I honestly do. But I also feel like at the same time, you have Naomi Brown, you have Zacchaeus, you have Jerry McLaurin. I mean, you have a lot of guys now that you have to work around and work with in order to have this evenly spread play time. And you got to make sure that you let the young guys cook. But also, you just got a veteran who probably expects a lot of playing time. So it'll be interesting to see how Dan Quinn utilizes him.
Great moves from the Eagles, I think. Very happy for Saquon, Penn State guy. He's the best running back in the league. There's no doubt about it. He just had one of the greatest, seasons ever as a running back in the league. Right up there with the best, perhaps. So, yeah, very well warranted extension with the Eagles. Very happy for him. Zach Bond, like Peter said, to see where he came from in New Orleans as a special teams guy and, just the way he played last year for the Eagles. It's a very inspiring story of never giving up on yourself and, working hard. Very happy for him. Great move from the Eagles, who were clearly the best team in the NFL this past season. They're keeping those key pieces on both offense and defense. Great moves. And then Debo to the Commanders. It's an interesting one. I like it for the Commanders. Like Jake said earlier in the episode, you can never have too many receivers in the receiving room. So I think, bringing in a veteran presence like Debo who can run the ball along with his catching ability, I think that'll be good. A nice tool for Jaden Daniels to use alongside guys like, Terry McLaurin and Zach Ertz, who I believe also re-signed a 1-year deal there. So it's a good move from the Commanders, who are obviously looking to compete in the NFC going into next season. So yeah, I mean
Which
the
they
NFC
very well
East,
can.
good moves.
They
Yeah,
very well can.
they very well can with the roster they have. So yeah, I like the all those moves right there.
Yeah, I think with the Eagles, I think Peter touched on it very, very well with Saquon and with Zach Bond. Zach Bond, I think very un-Howie Roseman-like. Howie Roseman has never really been a sign linebackers kind of player. They've had a handful of journeymen there the past few years, including with Zach Bond, who, like Peter mentioned, they picked up from the Saints, was not even a kind of an inside on-ball linebacker as the Eagles moved him there during the season, did the pass rushes very well. Of course, the instrumental in the defense's play throughout the playoffs and in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. So, well-deserved. I'm glad they secured him, and I can't wait to see how he does the rest of his contract with Vic Fangio and that defense. And Saquon Barkley, I think that's another savvy Howie Roseman move. I think something for the contract that goes under the radar is his cap hit is essentially slashed in half because of this new deal as well. I think it went from 14 to 7 million. Another Howie Roseman. We talk about bad GMs earlier. Great GM move right there with that kind of cap maneuvering. And with the Commanders, I know, Peter, you're a little bit down on it, on Deebo Samuel. A little bit. I know, the
I'm
end of his
hesitant. I would say I'm
49ers.
down. I would say
Hesitant.
hesitant.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair. I think that I think I really liked what Cliff Kingsbury did with those offensive pieces you mentioned. So I think he can get the most out of him. Maybe again that new situation. He was fighting punters on the sidelines in San Francisco. I think it was the end of that marriage. The divorce was near, and I think this new team on the rise with Jaden Daniels, with all the momentum that they built this past year. I mean, maybe he could be the diva wide receiver and mess it all up. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that momentum's going to ride through him. He's going to elevate his playback. Maybe not an all-pro, but I think he's going to be a very good complement number 2 to McLaurin.
But let's move on to some of the moves that happened today. Speaking of some good GMs, the Bills just released Von Miller, freeing up $8 million in cap space. DK Metcalf was traded to the Steelers just 2 or 3 hours ago for a second-round pick, and he was extended for 5 years, $150 million contract there. I was on the line with Cameron Whitney when that happened. You should have heard his reaction. And this happened like an hour ago. Devontae Adams joined the Rams on a 2-year, $46 million deal, and Josh Allen just got a 6-year extension worth $330 million, $250 million guaranteed.
I think we'll start with the Seahawks. They also released Tyler Lockett, if I'm not mistaken. They released him. So they basically have no wide receiver room right now. Absolutely rebuild right now because also Geno Smith being gone. However, Geno gone, Tyler Lockett gone, DK Metcalf gone. You got your veteran. The veterans there are pretty much gone. Jake mentioned diva wide receivers. I mean, you got George Pickens and DK Metcalf on the same team. Now you have two of the most diva-driven wide receivers on the same squad. And it'll be very interesting to see how those two attitudes align or collide with the number of touches that the one or other gets. And we'll see who's throwing the ball. We'll see if it's Russell Wilson. We'll see if it's Justin Fields. We still don't have an answer to that question, which I think, depending on the outcome of that situation, we'll have a better answer on how well this whole trade will fan out. I know there are some Steeler fans that are saying, get rid of Fields, keep Russell, draft a quarterback maybe this year or next year.
I don't think any of them are saying that.
No,
What shots are you in? What shots are you in?
I can't speak for every Steelers fan. I'm sure that some of them are saying they want fresh. Some of them are saying keep the two that they have now. I think that it's good for the Steelers. Obviously, DK Metcalf is, when he is putting aside his attitude and he has that winning mentality, he could be a unit. He's very strong, very fast, very physical, obviously. And then you got George Pickens throwing haymakers down the field. Again, another guy who has great hands, but I think if the Steelers can play their cards right, it's a great wide receiver room to have. And you align that with a healthy Pat Freiermuth, who could prove to be a good tight end to have. It'll be interesting to see how they either implode or flourish in Pittsburgh. Congrats to Josh Allen on his contract extension. I don't think any of us were doubting the fact that he was going to stay in Buffalo. Or he was not going to stay in Buffalo. I think we all were expecting him to stay in Buffalo for as long as possible. The release of Von Miller, helps free up cap space. I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say as to what team would be interested in a guy like Von Miller. Where do you guys see him going?
Well, I know that they've mentioned that both sides have mentioned that they would be willing for him to return to Buffalo after free agency, depending. So that's that might be the most likely outcome, or maybe he retires. He is up there in age. Honestly, I don't see another team really pursuing him too much. He doesn't have much to offer in the way of play nowadays. I would say mostly he would just be sort of a mentor player.
I think he should retire. I think he's had a great career. I think he should be in the Hall of Fame too when it's all said and done with his play. I think it's time to maybe go into coaching. Take that experience. Go on the Bills staff. Go on the Bills staff for coaching.
Jason Peters,
put him on.
Retire.
Yeah. Go on the D-line staff. Josh Allen. I guess I'll start there. Peter wrapped up with that. We're talking about contracts all episode long, and a great one to secure Josh Allen up $250 guaranteed money for him. Again, Justin has been on this show, and we have as well, in full support of such a great player in this league. Still has yet to get to the big game. We're all hoping for it as football fans with the talent that he has put together, hoping that at some point in this contract he can. I know Justin is as well, but well-deserved for what he's been able to put together the past few years, really putting this Bills team on his back into the playoffs. So well-deserved with that. I know Peter really didn't touch on this, but Davante Adams to the Rams.
I forgot. Oh my gosh.
That's fine. That's fine. Feel free to
just
jump
happened
in.
an hour ago.
Yeah. All of this is real fresh. That's very interesting. Yeah, with the whole Cooper Cup that you brought up yourself, Peter, earlier, him being on the move somewhere at some point. Now you bring in Davante Adams, who goes from one veteran quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, who that's a whole nother situation that could unfold with him, but going to Matt Stafford, who's playing still excellent football this many years into his career, with the Sean McVay system. A different style to Puka Nacua, almost very similar in a way where, he can win those one-on-one matchups. Even still, the speed has gone down due to his age. He doesn't have that same burst he did years ago with the Packers, but I'm very intrigued to see how they, match up those wide receivers like we were talking about with Deebo Samuel, adding him to the mix. 2 years, $48 million. That is not chump change, ladies and gentlemen. That is some money for, an aging wide receiver. We'll see how he adds to the mix. But also, again, to Metcalf. What a trade. The Steelers, again, a team that really in recent years has not, they had the Russell Wilson. They kind of picked him up off of a lost situation with the Broncos, but we really haven't seen the Steelers make that big splash. A lot of the guys that they've brought in have been through the draft, through smaller trades where they've really built them up, or guys that I've had around for a while. So definitely exciting. And hey, I will mention DK Metcalf had a pretty few great years with Russell Wilson at quarterback when he was in Seattle. I'm just saying, I don't know if it can be replicated, but yeah, exciting for Pittsburgh, rebuild for Seattle. We'll see how DK plays there in Pittsburgh.
The one thing I wanted to bring up real quick before Nate started with Devontae and the Rams, Jake, you kind of mentioned it with how they're going to work the matchups. I can see Devontae carrying a lot of that slot receiver-esque workload now that his speed, his burst isn't as big as it was due to his age. You got Puka Nacua who can fly across that field. We've seen him beat those one-on-one situations so many times, but to use Davante Adams' field general knowledge of positioning situations and where he could put himself on the field, I think that we'll see a lot more short to medium plays with Davante Adams to get them across those 5, 6, 7 yard needed, and to see secondary defenses question, oh, is he going to go to Vontae? Is he going to go to Puka, who's flying down the field? So I think it's a good trade for the Rams. I think it's a good signing for the Rams, and I'm excited, like you said, to see how he works with another veteran quarterback who, in Matt Stafford, in my opinion, he's still playing to a pretty top level for a guy his age.
This was breaking news to me. I didn't know that he had signed with the Rams. I like it for the
Breaking
Rams.
news, mate.
Yeah, breaking news to me. I think it's a good move. I mean, obviously they're looking to shop, Cooper Kupp, and bringing in a guy like Devontae Adams, who is still, I'd say one of the better receivers in the league, even though he is getting older. He can still go out there and put in a great game for you, and putting him with Matt Stafford, who, like you said, Peter, is still performing at a very high level. At this point in his career, I think it'll be fun to watch, and I think it gives the Rams a very, very solid chance to win their division and compete in the NFC once again this upcoming season. Moving on, I guess we'll move up north for me then to Seattle in that division, trading DK Metcalf to the Steelers. Didn't expect it, but the Steelers, hey, they came to play. They're in a tough division in the AFC North like they are every year, and I think it was a good move for him. Although they still have the looming question, as we've all mentioned, who's going to be throwing the football to DK Metcalf next year. Like you said, Jake, he had some great seasons with Russell Wilson in Seattle. So is that maybe, going to sway the thinking a little bit amongst Steelers fans and people within the organization? Maybe, who knows? But we'll see if it works out for him in Seattle, along with, Pickens in that offense. Like you said, some divas, but we'll see how that goes. Josh Allen, no surprise there, deserves the contract. One of the best quarterbacks in the league. And as we said, never a doubt that he wouldn't stay in Buffalo and that they wouldn't extend him. So good move there. And then my old friend Von Miller, Broncos legend for life, getting released. I mean, like you said, I think it's just time for him to hang it up, probably retire, call it there. He peaked, and he did what his thing, MVP in Super Bowl win over the Panthers for the Broncos. So I wouldn't be surprised if he retired, but maybe he'll decide to stick around. Who knows? I don't really know what he's thinking, but I would say probably time for him to retire.
A lot of moves already happening across the NFL landscape. There's more to come. There's the draft. We'll have continued coverage throughout the coming weeks, the coming months, of everything happening in the NFL. And also, again, shout out Sam for a wonderful tribute to athletic trainers across the country. Sam being one himself, try to get to the highest level. So please appreciate your athletic trainers that are doing their best for athletes all across the country in all of their respective sports. And for all of us, thank you for listening to another episode of the Lunch Hour Sports Podcast. For our entire crew, thank you for listening. Stay tuned for future episodes right here on the Lunch Hour Sports Podcast.